Back then I used to say but I learned a lot since then. I'll share that with you in a moment. Hey there, Gerry Gould from Gerry Gould and Associates. On behalf of Product Prep, I'd like to share a quick story with you about how I got into sales, automotive sales that is. So I always say I'm going to tell you a story about a man named Jed, poor mountaineer. Forget about that, all right? Let me tell you about my story. It happened in 1979. I was reconditioning cars in this Woodworth Chevrolet in Andover, Massachusetts, when I got a call from my then girlfriend, who became my wife, and she was pregnant. And I was reconditioning cars, and I realized at that moment that I can't make a living reconditioning cars, so I had to get a real job. My dad happened to be the sales manager at a Chrysler dealership up in Salem, New Hampshire. I got on my Harley Davidson Sportster with my long hair and leather jacket and took a ride up there after work and walked into my dad's office. My dad looked at me and he knew the story. He knew why I was there. He said, "You're here because you need a real job." And I said, "That's right, Dad. I need a real job. I can't be reconditioning cars all my life." And my dad was a really good salesman. He was actually the manager of this dealership. And he said, "Okay, we're going to hire you, but you need to cut that hair, you need to get rid of that leather jacket, and now's my opportunity to get you off that bike." And I said, "Okay." Well, I kept the secret from my dad. I kept the bike, got rid of the leather jacket, cut my hair, and went out and bought a couple suits. And it was about a week before I started. My dad gave me a bunch of brochures, and every night he'd come home and he'd give me a couple lessons. And one of the lessons he taught me was you got to make the customer want the car. That was my job as a sales consultant. So that Saturday I went to work, and there I was, not knowing what to do. And my dad told me, go out to the porch. There was a porch in the front of this dealership, and he said, be the first one to grab that up. Everybody knows what an up is. That's the customer driving on the lot. Well, I saw this old Dodge pickup truck pull up and pulled up to the front of the showroom, and out of the passenger side, a woman. She happened to be pregnant. And I'm assuming that her husband at the time walked out of the driver's side, and I went out and I said, "Hi, welcome to Fitzgerald Hicks Dodge. My name's Gerry Gould. How can I help you?" Back then I used to say, "How can I help you?" But I learned a lot since then. I'll share that with you in a moment. And they said to me, "We're here because my wife is pregnant and we're about to have a baby, and I need a station wagon." And I said to them, because one of the first lessons I learned, my dad taught me, is you got to gain some common ground, something in common with that person. And I said, man, what better common ground than me being in the car business because my girlfriend's pregnant, and here I am. My very first sale is with a pregnant couple. This is awesome. So I immediately took them over to the station wagons, and the woman, the wife, fell in love with this Dodge Aspen station wagon. 1978, car had about 3,000 miles on it. It was evergreen with an evergreen vinyl interior. And it looked beautiful in New Hampshire because right next to those evergreen trees. And I showed him the car, and I walked into the showroom, and I told my dad what was going on, and he said, "Take this plate, go out there and take them for a test drive. And when you come back, make sure they park it in the soul line if they like the car, because you don't want anybody to take it from them." And that's exactly what I did. I took them down the road, we went a couple miles, they drove back into the dealership, and as we were driving back in the dealership, I said to the customer, "Mr. and Mrs. Jones, why don't you park that car on the soul line if you like it? That way it will be there so that we can sell it to you. Because if you park it back in the lot, they might sell it underneath us." Well, they did. They parked in the soul line. I was getting that much closer to a sale. They got out of the car, and I looked at the husband, and I said, "What do you think?" And he said,
"It's a nice car."
I said, "Do you want it?" He said,
"That all depends."
Now, I'm pretty street smart growing up in the streets of Boston. I figured what he meant by "it all depends." But I didn't discuss price, because that's one of the things my dad told me to stay off of, is price. So I said, "Okay, let's go inside. I'll give you some figures." And he said, "That'd be great." So I pat him down to my desk, and I walked over to my dad at the sales tower, and my dad asked me what I had, and I said, I got a customer who's interested in the station wagon. And if anybody knows, back then, 1978, everybody used that Foursquare and that Sharpie marker, and he took that piece of paper and he put a Foursquare there, and he said, "These are the figures. Now go present the figures to the customer. And this is what I want you to do, Gerald."
"My name's Gerry, Dad."
He said, "Well, stop calling me Dad." So I had to call him Gordon. "Well, Gordon, what do we do?" He said, "Go and put these numbers in front of the customer and say, 'These are the numbers, these are the figures,' and shut up. Don't say a word after that." That's what I did. I walked over to my desk, put the numbers in front of the customer. I said, "These are the figures," and I waited. And it seemed like an eternity, but then the customer looked at me and said, the husband said, "Where's my discount?" And I took a lesson from my dad and I said, "Do you want the car?" And the husband looked at me and said, "I want a discount." And I said, "I'll be right back." Because I didn't know what to do. So I walked up to the sales tower, and my dad goes, "What do you got?" And I said, "I gave him the numbers and they want a discount, Dad." "Oh, Gordon." And Gordon, my dad, said, they want a discount. What did you say when they said they want a discount? I asked him if they want the car, and what did he say? He said he wanted a discount. My dad looked at me and said, okay, let's go talk to him. And on the way to the desk, my dad grabbed my shoulder and said, Gerry, this is what I want you to do. Nothing. I want you to sit next to the customer, I'll do all the talking, and you don't say a word. This is my very first car I'm showing. So I walked over to the customer, I sat next to him, I pulled up a chair, and my dad sat in my seat. He put the proposal on the desk with a Sharpie marker in his hand, looked at the husband and said, I understand you have a question about the proposal that Gerry brought up to you. And the husband looked at my dad and said, yep, I'm looking for a discount. My dad looked right at the customer and said, do you want the car? The customer looked right at my dad and said, no, I want a discount. My dad looked right over at the wife and said, Mrs. Jones, do you want the car? And Mrs. Jones said, yes, I want the car. My dad looked right back at the husband and said, she wants the car. Doesn't she deserve it? And the husband said, of course she does. And my dad said, all you need to do is sign the paper and it's yours. And I sold my very first car. I was so proud of myself. Actually, my dad sold it for me. No, I sold the car. I got the customer to want it, and he went in and closed the deal. Throughout my sales career, I learned a lot of valuable lessons. Number one, inference. What does inference mean? You got to pick something up on that person that drives into the lot, something on their body. Maybe they're a cheesehead because they got a green shirt on, or maybe they're a Red Sox fan because they have a Red Sox tattoo. I don't know, but pick something up on them and gain common ground. Rapport. People buy from people they like. That's what my dad keeps telling me. Always. People buy from people they like. And I learned that. In sales, the sale of a car. Because later on in my sales career, I started selling intangibles. And what I mean by that is, a car is a tangible item. Customers touch it, feel it. It's easier to sell. And people buy from people they like in that environment. But then I became an F&I manager. And I realized that it's not so much liking that's important. What's most important in the F&I arena is credibility. You got to build credibility. So I learned a number of lessons along the way. Selling, people buy from people they like. Rapport is important, but when you get into a management position, credibility is more important. So what you say, transparency, directness, upfrontness, that all matters. The smoke and mirror days are long, long gone. I learned that a long, long time ago. That's one of the biggest lessons I learned. Do they want it is number one, because that's all that matters. How many times have I been in a situation when I was selling a car and said to the customer, Mrs. Jones, you don't understand. If you don't want the car, this is just air. It's just white noise. But if you want the car, now we got something going, and I can go to work for you. Because it matters to my sales management team whether you want the car. And then I got into F&I, and I realized when people said I don't want the products that I'm offering them or making available to them, that's not the truth. They want it. Who doesn't want an extended warranty? Who doesn't want tire and wheel coverage? Who doesn't want key replacement coverage? They all want it. They just don't want to pay for it. The other lesson I learned is value. The value has got to exceed the cost. And in order to do that, you're only going to learn things by asking questions. Stop with the verbal vomit. I learned that. And start asking people, because people will tell you how to sell them just by asking them questions. I learned in selling cars, as time passed, Consumer Reports was big back then. The internet wasn't big back then. I used to ask people when they came in with a consumer report in their hand, what research have you done? What inspired you to look at this particular vehicle? You're standing in my lot. What influenced you to come to my lot? What influenced you to call my dealership? Those are the type of questions you need to ask your customer, because what you realize when they give you the answer is the exact reasons they're sitting there. And you regurgitate, or you reinstate all the reasons they're standing in front of you. You reinstate all the reasons they're looking at this particular car. And those are the things that I learned to sell. Now, how do you climb the ranks? How did I get to where I am right now? It wasn't luck. Believe me when I tell you, I was the best dressed in the dealership. I followed every process that was given to me. I listened to every manager with intensity. I listened to what they told me. I followed the scripts. I memorized the scripts because I realized a long, long time ago in my career that these word tracks and these scripts matter. That's your roadmap to success, because if they ever get off track, that detour, you can always get back on that roadmap. So that's how you move up in this environment, in the automobile environment. You have to be noticed. And it's not because you sell all these cars, it's because you follow process. And because you're a good leader, you're not a boss, you're not telling people what to do. You say you're gonna do something, you do it. And it's actions. You know, Ben Franklin once said, it's better well done than well said. Think about that. Do it, don't just say it. And then the difference between a rookie and a pro. What is the difference between a rookie and a pro? Rookies just stay there. It's almost like comfort zone. You know, comfort zones are great, but nothing ever grows there. You're just stuck in this comfort zone and nothing grows. You gotta get outside, step outside that comfort zone. Try something different. Research. You know, I heard this advertisement once about this special sales trainer, I forget his name, but he talked about, 90% of your sales staff has never even written or read a sales book, a book on selling. You're in the car business. You might be a fisherman, a hunter, or a golfer. How many golfing magazines, fishing magazines, car magazines you have at your home that you read? But have you ever picked up a sales manual? That's how you grow. Have you ever Googled a certain thing? Have you learned from your past experiences when the customer says, no, I don't want the car? What did you learn from that experience? When a customer says, no, I don't want to buy these options. What did you learn? It's a learning experience. Don't stay stagnant. Don't stay in that comfort zone. Step outside. Get into the big pond. And what's the biggest thing you should focus on when starting off in sales? Be yourself. Just be natural. Be yourself. You know, McDonald's made millions by just training their associates, we'll call them associates, but they were just counter people, to say, would you like an apple pie with that? That's all they did. That's selling, man. Very naturally. They didn't like, would you like an apple pie with that? That was it. It made millions. And then they moved from apple pies to, how'd you like to supersize that? So just be yourself. That's the best advice I can give you. So I hope you enjoyed my story, all right? Until next time, go get 'em!